My name is Alara Vance. For most of my 31 years, that name has been synonymous with quiet observation. I was the child who preferred the dappled light under the old willow in our backyard to the boisterous games my sister orchestrated on the lawn. My parents, both pragmatic and ambitious civil engineers, saw my introspection not as a sign of a rich inner world, but as a lack of drive. They loved me, I believe, in the way one loves a delicate, unshowy wildflower discovered in a garden cultivated for prize-winning roses. Pretty, but not particularly useful. My sister, Chloe, was their prize rose. 2 years my junior, she was everything I was not: gregarious, competitive, and brilliantly adept at navigating the social and academic currents that baffled me. While I filled sketchbooks with impossible architectural designs inspired by seashell spirals and fractal patterns in ferns, Chloe filled a trophy case. She blazed a trail through law school and landed a coveted position at a top corporate firm in our coastal city of Port Blossom. She was the family's testament to a well-executed life plan. I, with my string of part-time jobs, bookshop clerk, barista, freelance graphic designer, was the cautionary tale. I was the dreamer, and in my family's lexicon, that was a gentle pejorative for someone who had failed to launch. The early evening light, the color of pale honey, streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Airy, Port Blossom's most exclusive waterfront event space. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air and caught the sharp, elegant lines of my sister's custom-designed wedding gown. Below us, the tranquil waters of the Sound mirrored the bruised twilight sky. 200 of the city's most polished and influential citizens were seated at tables adorned with cascades of white orchids and flickering candles, their attention fixed on Chloe as she stood beside her new husband, Liam. I smoothed the lap of my simple navy silk dress, a piece I'd owned for years. It felt less like an outfit and more like a piece of armor, its familiarity a small comfort amidst the sea of bespoke suits and couture. I could feel the weight of my family's collective gaze. Aunt Maeve, my mother's sister, was whispering to Uncle Robert, her hand shielding her mouth in a gesture of failed subtlety. My cousin Daniel's wife, a woman whose life was a curated gallery of social victories, kept glancing between Chloe and me, her lips pursed in a small, knowing smile. They were all waiting for the speech. Chloe had been rehearsing it for weeks, framing it as a loving tribute, but I knew its true purpose. It was to be a masterclass in gentle condescension, a public affirmation of her success, burnished by the contrast of my supposed failure. I took a discreet look at my watch. 8:52 p.m., 8 more minutes. 8 more minutes of being Alara Vance, the sweet but misguided older sister. 8 more minutes before the tide would turn. Before I speak about my incredible new husband, Chloe began, her voice, trained by years of debate club and courtroom presentations, carrying effortlessly across the hall. I want to take a moment to talk about the people who shape us. About family. Her eyes found mine across the room, and she offered a smile that was both brilliant and brittle. I felt a familiar, dull ache in my chest. It wasn't anger, not anymore. It was a quiet sorrow for the chasm that had grown between us, a space I had long ago stopped trying to cross. Liam, looking impeccably handsome in his tailored tuxedo, placed a proprietary hand on the small of her back. He was a prominent art dealer, a man who understood value, lineage, and the power of a good acquisition. He was everything my parents had hoped for in a son-in-law, a perfect match for their perfect daughter. "My sister, Alara, is here tonight," Chloe said, and a soft wave of attention shifted to me. I managed a small, polite smile, the one I had perfected over a lifetime of playing my role. The supportive, slightly lost older sister. And truly, I have learned so much from her. A murmur of appreciative sympathy fluttered through the crowd. They saw me as Chloe intended them to, a woman adrift in her early 30s. "Alara has taught me the value of exploration," she continued, choosing her words with a lawyer's precision. "She's explored so many different jobs, lived in so many charming little apartments. She's never been afraid to start over with a new project, a new idea." What they didn't know was that my charming little apartment was a serene, minimalist loft in a historic waterfront building I'd purchased anonymously 2 years ago. That my different jobs had been a meticulously planned education in supply chain logistics, material sourcing, and small business management. That my new ideas had not been flights of fancy, but the foundational pillars of a quiet revolution. She's currently working as a freelance artisan, Chloe said, making the term sound both quaint and unserious, like someone who weaves macrame plant hangers to sell at the farmer's market. She lives so simply, in that little cottage down by the fisherman's wharf, driving that faithful old Subaru. She holds on to this beautiful, childlike belief that one of her inventions will change the world. More sympathetic nods. I saw my father shake his head, a look of fond exasperation on his face. They saw a life of deferred dreams. They couldn't see the silent, relentless, disciplined work that had consumed me for the past 5 years. They didn't know that the little cottage was a deliberately low-key choice to avoid attention, while my actual home, a glass-walled house nestled in a private, wooded cove, was my sanctuary. The old Subaru was my shield, allowing me to move through the city unnoticed while a modest collection of electric vehicles sat in a private garage. Chloe's voice swelled with magnanimous wisdom. But the most important lesson Alara has taught me is the one she might not even realize she's taught. She's taught me what happens when you let dreams run away with you. She taught me the importance of being grounded, of making practical choices, of building a life on a foundation of reality, not fantasy. The room was wrapped. Here was Chloe, the beautiful, successful bride, graciously sharing the wisdom gleaned from her poor, struggling sister. She raised her champagne flute. So to Alara. I hope that being here tonight, seeing what a life built on solid ground looks like, will inspire you. I hope it encourages you to finally find a stable path. Because we all love you, and we just want you to be happy. The crowd began to lift their glasses, a sea of glittering crystal ready to toast to my hopeful, eventual mediocrity. I raised my own glass, my expression serene. And then, the unexpected happened. The large screen behind the head table, which had been displaying a tasteful slideshow of Chloe and Liam's engagement photos, flickered and went dark. A moment later, it lit up with the logo of the World Design Council. A prestigious, sonorous voice filled the room, overriding the string quartet. We interrupt our scheduled programming for a special announcement. The embargo has just lifted on this year's winner of the coveted Vanguard Prize for Innovation in Sustainable Materials. A hush fell over the area. Chloe's flute paused in midair. The 2024 Vanguard Prize, the highest honor in materials science and ecological design, is awarded to Ethelgard, a previously anonymous research collective, for the development of Luminera, a revolutionary bio-integrated textile. On the screen, a video began to play. It showed a fabric that shimmered with a soft, internal light, a material that was both incredibly strong and ethereally beautiful. It showed the material being used in architectural models, in medical-grade sutures that dissolved harmlessly into the body, in water filtration systems that were cleaning polluted rivers. For years, the founder of Ethelgard has remained completely anonymous, known only by the pseudonym Architect. Tonight, we can reveal her identity. My professional headshot, one I'd had taken 6 months prior for this exact moment, filled the screen. It was a simple photo. I was wearing a plain black sweater, my hair was pulled back, and I was looking directly at the camera, my expression calm and clear. The founder, CEO, and chief innovator behind Ethelgard is Port Blossom native, Alara Vance. The silence in the room was no longer polite. It was a profound, vacuum-sealed void. I could hear the hum of the climate control system, the clink of ice in a forgotten glass. Liam's hand had dropped from Chloe's back. My mother and father were frozen, their faces masks of utter bewilderment. The announcement coincides with the news of Ethelgard's acquisition by global design titan, Viridian Designs, in a deal valued at $1.8 billion, the announcer continued. Sources close to the deal confirm that Ms. Vance, as the sole owner of Ethelgard's patents and intellectual property, will personally clear an estimated $1.2 billion, making her one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country and a new, formidable force in the world of green technology. The video cut to an interview with the CEO of Viridian Designs. Ilara Vance is a once-in-a-generation mind. Her work will not just redefine the textile industry, it will redefine our relationship with the built environment. We are honored to be her partner in bringing this vision to the world. The screen returned to the wedding slideshow, but the image of Chloe and Liam smiling on a sailboat seemed like a photograph from a different lifetime. No one was looking at it. Every single person in that room was looking at me. Slowly, I placed my champagne flute back on the table and stood up, the navy silk of my dress rustling softly in the stillness. The dress no longer felt like armor. It felt like what it was, a simple, well-made garment, chosen for its comfort, not for the opinion of others. "Well," I said, my voice quiet but carrying easily in the charged silence. "I suppose that's one way to make an announcement." Chloe's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her perfect composure had shattered, leaving behind a raw, naked shock. I looked at her, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to manage her feelings or absorb her judgment. I just felt a quiet sense of clarity. "You said you hoped I'd be inspired by seeing a life built on solid ground," I said, my voice even. "And you were right, Chloe. I was. Seeing how much this family, this world, values appearances over substance, it inspired me to build something so real, so substantial, that it couldn't be ignored or misunderstood." Liam finally found his voice, taking a half step forward. "Ilara. We had no idea." "I know," I said, turning my gaze to him. "You couldn't have. But last month, at the gallery opening for the new exhibit, you told your investors that Chloe was a brilliant strategist and that it was a good thing because her artist sister didn't have a practical bone in her body. I remember, because I was standing right behind you, meeting with the building's owner to finalize the purchase of the entire historic block your gallery is leased on." Liam's face went pale. My phone, which I'd set to silent, began to vibrate against the table, a persistent, insistent buzz. A cascade of notifications was lighting up the screen. News alerts, emails, messages from people I hadn't heard from in a decade. I picked up my small clutch. "The acquisition of Ethelgard is just the beginning," I said, addressing the room as much as my family. "Viridian is funding a new, independent research division, which I will be leading. Our next project involves developing carbon-negative building materials from engineered mycelium." I walked over to the head table. Chloe was sitting down now, her hands trembling in her lap, the magnificent wedding dress suddenly looking like a costume. I leaned down, my voice low enough for only her to hear. "Congratulations on your wedding, Chloe. It's a beautiful party. And don't worry about the bill." I gave her a small, sad smile. "The area is owned by a hospitality group that's a subsidiary of my holding company. Consider it my wedding gift." As I walked toward the grand entrance, a path cleared before me. The whispers that followed me now were not of pity, but of awe and disbelief. At the door, I paused and looked back. The photographer was aiming his lens at me, his expression one of frantic realization that he was documenting the wrong story. "Oh, and Chloe?" I called out, my voice clear and calm. "That little cottage by the wharf? I'm donating it, along with the land, to the city to build a new marine biology research center. I think that's a sufficiently stable path, don't you?" I didn't wait for an answer. I stepped out into the cool, salty air of the Port Blossom night, leaving the warmth and the light and the wreckage of their assumptions behind me. For the first time, I felt the space around me not as emptiness, but as freedom. The sky above wasn't a limit, it was a blueprint. The next morning, I was in my true studio. It was a vast, converted warehouse on a forgotten stretch of the industrial waterfront, a place no one ever thought to look for me. The entire northern wall was glass, offering an uninterrupted view of the gray, churning water and the distant, mist-shrouded islands. The space was filled with sunlight, the scent of fresh-brewed coffee, ozone, and damp earth from the dozens of experimental mycelium bricks curing on long steel racks. Prototypes of laminera fabric were draped over drafting tables, glowing softly even in the daylight. This was my cathedral, the place where my fantasies had been forged into reality. My phone had not stopped its relentless buzzing. I had messages from venture capitalists, heads of state, and my third-grade teacher. I'd ignored them all, except for one. It was a short email from Dr. Anya Sharma, my college botany professor, the only person who had ever looked at my wild, nature-inspired sketches and seen not daydreams, but potential. Saw the news, Alara. I always knew those weeds you were obsessed with were the most interesting things in the garden. They were right about you. You changed the world. So proud. I was composing a reply when my assistant, a sharp, fiercely loyal young man named Ben, buzzed me from the front office. Ms. Vance, a Ms. Chloe Sterling is here to see you. She says you're her sister. I looked at the clock. 11 a.m. She must have spent the entire night and morning navigating the fallout. I felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name, not pity, but a weary empathy. Send her back, Ben. Thank you. Chloe entered the studio and stopped just inside the door, looking utterly out of place. Her tailored suit was immaculate, her hair was perfect, but her eyes were wide and lost as she took in the scale of the operation, the humming machinery, the lab equipment, the sheer, tangible reality of my work. She was clutching her expensive leather handbag like a life raft. Alara, she began, her voice strained. I came to apologize. I gestured to a simple wooden stool near one of the drafting tables. I remained standing. For what, specifically? For the speech? Or for the 5 years of pity that preceded it? The question was blunt, but my tone was not unkind. I was not interested in retribution. I was interested, for the first time, in the truth. Both, she said, her voice barely a whisper. She sat down, her posture rigid. The speech, it was meant to be encouraging. In my world, you point out a problem and offer a solution. I saw your life as a problem. The solution was for you to be more like me. There it was. The fundamental flaw in her worldview, so deeply ingrained she couldn't see it. Even in her apology, she was framing my life as a problem that needed solving. Chloe, my life was never a problem, I said gently, walking over to a table where a small, intricate model of a self-sustaining home sat, its walls glowing faintly with embedded laminate fibers. It was a process. You just couldn't see it because you were looking for a blueprint you already understood. You never once, in all these years, sat down and asked me, Alara, what are you building? What is this for? Show me your work. Her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. I didn't know how, she admitted, her gaze dropping to the concrete floor. Everything in my life has been about following a path. A prestigious, pre-approved path. You were bushwhacking. I didn't know how to speak that language. It scared me. What scared you? I asked, turning to face her fully. That I would fail? She looked up, and I saw tears glistening in her eyes. It was the most honest expression I had seen on her face in over a decade. No, she said, her voice cracking. I was scared you would succeed. The confession hung in the air between us, raw and startling. I was jealous, she continued, the words tumbling out now. Not of your little cottage or your old car. I was jealous of your freedom. I was jealous that you had the courage to turn your back on the plan. I did everything I was supposed to do. I got the grades, the degree, the job, the husband. I built a perfect life on paper. And it's hollow, Alara. It's so hollow. I spend my days arguing over contractual clauses that don't matter for companies that make things no one needs. You were building the future in a warehouse no one knew existed. For the first time, I saw her not as my polished, condescending younger sister, but as someone trapped inside a gilded cage of her own making. The sorrow I'd felt for our broken relationship shifted into a deep, aching compassion for her. I pulled up another stool and sat opposite her. The life you built isn't hollow, Chloe. It's just not my life. Your skills are real. You're a brilliant negotiator. You understand corporate structures and legal frameworks better than anyone I know. Those things have value. My phone buzzed again. Ben's face appeared on my monitor. Ms. Vance, sorry to interrupt. The architectural team for the new Hope Housing project is on the line. They need your final approval on the material specs. I glanced at Chloe. I'm working on something new now. A pilot program to build entire communities of affordable, carbon-negative housing for displaced populations. The structures will generate their own light, filter their own water, and be built from materials that heal the soil when they're no longer needed. Her eyes, red-rimmed from crying, widened in genuine fascination. You're building self-healing towns? I smiled, a real, unburdened smile. I'm trying to. For the next hour, I told her everything. I explained the science behind mycelial growth, the challenges of scaling production, the intricate legal hurdles of zoning and land use for such a radical new form of construction. She listened, not as a sister, but as a professional. She started asking sharp, insightful questions about patent law, international distribution rights, and navigating government bureaucracy. In that moment, the wall between us dissolved, replaced by a shared current of intellectual energy. You're going to get buried in lawsuits and red tape, she said finally, a flicker of her old, analytical self returning. Viridian's legal team is good, but they're corporate. They don't know how to fight the battles you're going to be fighting. You need someone who specializes in disruptive innovation law. Someone who can protect your vision. Are you offering your services? I asked quietly. She hesitated, looking down at her manicured hands. I know I have no right to ask. After last night, after everything. But yes, if you'd have me, I want to be part of something that matters. I want to learn how to bushwhack. I studied her face, searching for the sister I remembered from beneath the willow tree, the one who, for a brief time, had believed in magic before the world told her not to. I saw a glimmer of her there. There could be a place for you, I said, choosing my words with care. Head of Legal and Strategic Partnerships for the Ethelgard Foundation, the nonprofit arm of the company. But Chloe, we would need new rules. She looked at me, her expression open and ready. First, I said, you would work for the mission, not for me. Your loyalty is to the work. Second, we communicate honestly. No more assumptions, no more coded language. And third, you never, ever give a speech at a family function again. A watery laugh escaped her lips, the first genuine sound of joy I'd heard from her in years. Deal, she said. When she left my studio an hour later, the air felt different. It was lighter. The chasm between us hadn't vanished, but we had just finished building a bridge. It was a fragile structure, built of apologies and shared vision, but it was a start. The following Monday, the cover of a major business magazine featured my portrait with the headline, "The Quiet Architect: How Ilara Vance Built a Billion-Dollar Future in Secret." The story chronicled my 5-year journey, but it couldn't capture the real story. The real story arrived in a text message that afternoon. It was from Chloe. Just left my firm. My office is all packed up. See you tomorrow, boss. Let's go build something impossible. I looked out the great glass window of my studio at the city of Port Blossom, at the water and the sky. I realized that the greatest thing I had built over the past 5 years wasn't a company or a fortune. It was a life so firmly my own that it had room for forgiveness. It had room for a sister who had gotten lost and was finally, bravely, finding her way back. Sometimes, the most revolutionary act is not to burn bridges, but to painstakingly rebuild them, stronger and more honest than they were before. And sometimes, if you are very, very lucky, the people you love are willing to walk across them with you.